I was sitting on the living room floor with my laptop open, comparing prices between clearance sneakers online because my 7-year-old son, Liam, had quietly whispered to me that his toes hurt when he walked. He didn't even ask in the normal bold kid voice. He asked like he was scared to even want something. He curled his toes inward in embarrassment when he said it. "Mom, is it okay if you get me shoes one day?" Those shoes he had on were so worn, the rubber was peeling upward at the front, and I felt like my chest caved in that a child had to feel guilty for asking. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I looked up at him and smiled like I wasn't breaking inside. "Of course," I told him gently. "You don't have to feel bad for needing something. You deserve shoes that don't hurt." Liam smiled so small like he wasn't sure it was safe to be happy. He went back to drawing dinosaurs on scrap paper while I found a pair on sale and added it to cart with my debit card shaking because I had to choose between these shoes or groceries tomorrow. But I still clicked buy, because my son deserved something that didn't hurt when he walked. I thought we were alone in the room. I thought this was a quiet moment between a mother and her child. I forgot in this house, nothing good stayed quiet. My husband, Carson, heard me order them. He walked in from the hallway, slow and heavy like a storm moving through a narrow hallway. He leaned against the doorway and stared at me like I was doing something disgusting instead of something normal a mother should be allowed to do without being punished. "You spent money on him?" he said, cold and sharp like he was spitting glass. I turned toward him carefully because every sentence I ever said to this man had to be measured like it was a live grenade. "He needs shoes, Carson. His toes hurt. He's growing. He needs something that fits." Carson laughed under his breath like I cracked a joke he didn't think was funny. "No, he needs to learn reality. He doesn't get to be spoiled while we struggle." Spoiled? Shoes were spoiled. I stayed calm. It was a $38 pair on sale. He literally cannot wear these anymore. Carson walked toward me with slow, deliberate steps and his voice dropped lower. "You don't get to make financial decisions. I do. You run everything through me. Did you forget?" I didn't look away. "This is basic necessity, not luxury." He stepped closer. "He wasn't born to be treated like humans, Riley. You keep making him think he deserves things he doesn't." My son froze. He slowly pulled his feet back under him like he was trying to hide them. "Carson," I started. He didn't let me finish. He grabbed my arm and shoved me back, slamming my shoulder and upper back against the wall with such force it knocked the breath out of my chest. Not graphic, not cinematic, just sudden impact and shock. Liam screamed, "Mom!" and ran toward me, but Carson pointed at him and yelled, "Don't move!" Liam stopped instantly because this house taught him fear before first grade. My body trembled, but I forced myself to stand up straight, even though it felt like my lungs were burning. Carson looked down at Liam like he was looking at an object, not a boy. "If he wants to walk, he can walk barefoot," he said with this twisted smirk. "He's not a prince. He needs to learn what he actually is." I grabbed Liam by the shoulders and pulled him behind me. I could feel him trembling under my palms. Carson walked past us toward the entry door and swung it open wide. "Go outside barefoot," he commanded, "since you want to spend money on nonsense and raise him to think he's equal." Liam tried to say he was cold. Carson cut him off immediately. "Better get used to the ground hurting you. That's his place." He shoved us both toward the door. I didn't argue anymore. My son's safety was more important than my dignity in that second. I opened the screen door and stepped out barefoot, guiding Liam out in front of me. The concrete was cold, small bits of grit underfoot, and the sky had that pre-storm heaviness that made the air feel thicker. Carson slammed the door behind us like a final verdict. Liam looked up at me with huge, confused eyes and whispered through chattering teeth, "Mom, am I not supposed to be treated like people?" I dropped to my knees and held his face in my hands. "You are more valuable than every person in that house combined," I told him. "Don't ever doubt that." He nodded once, trying not to cry, because he learned young that crying in this family was another excuse to be punished. I stared at that closed door, and in that moment something irreversible locked into place inside me. I realized I wasn't just surviving a bad marriage. I was raising my son inside the same hell that shaped me. Carson didn't just see Liam as disposable. He saw me as disposable, and I promised myself then, quietly, coldly, without shaking, that this would be the last era of our lives where anyone had that kind of power over us. Because if they wanted to strip humanity away from my son, then I would strip away every piece of power they thought they owned. We sat outside for almost 20 minutes until Carson finally walked away from the door like we didn't exist. The second I heard the hallway floor creak upstairs, I slowly pushed the door back open just enough to slip inside quietly. I took Liam straight to our bedroom and locked the door. I wrapped his feet in a warm towel and sat with him on the bed until his breathing calmed. I told him to rest. I told him to draw dinosaurs again. I told him he did nothing wrong. But inside my head, there was a war going on so loud I couldn't hear my own pulse, because I realized something terrifying that moment. Carson didn't snap. Carson believed every word he said. He believed that my son didn't deserve basic human treatment. He believed I didn't deserve agency. He believed he controlled what we were allowed to want. And I realized I wasn't married to a man. I was married to someone who built his identity off being the dictator in a house full of fear. The next morning, he acted completely normal. He said nothing happened. He made coffee like it was just another day. He even kissed Brielle, my sister-in-law who was visiting, on the cheek like it was a sitcom morning. They joked about vacations and outfits like the night before meant nothing. That psychological normalization was almost worse than the violence itself. He looked at me across the kitchen table and said casually, "Don't waste energy trying to make him soft. Boys don't need comfort. They need reality." I didn't argue anymore. I learned silence is how you survive long enough to leave alive. I dropped Liam off at school, and instead of coming home, I drove to the library parking lot and sat inside the car, trembling because adrenaline still hadn't left my bloodstream. I opened my notes app and I started writing everything down: dates, words, exact sentences, every incident, every threat, every financial control tactic, moments I ignored before because I convinced myself it wasn't that bad. The moment I saw the whole timeline typed out, it hit me like a brick wall. This had been escalating for years, and I just kept shrinking myself smaller to make it survivable. I stayed in that car for 2 hours, not crying, not panicking, just documenting, just planning. I called my coworker friend Elena after that. She was the only person in my life who ever asked me sincerely, "Are you safe?" She answered on the second ring, and when I told her what happened, she didn't react with shock like I expected. She reacted like she had been waiting for this turning point. "Riley," she said, "you're not coming back to that house after today. I don't care if you think you're ready or not. I am not letting you stay there another night." She told me to pick Liam up from school that afternoon and drive directly to her apartment. She said she had space. She said we could stay as long as we needed. She said her cousin was a social worker who specialized in domestic coercion cases and could privately guide us step by step without making it a spectacle or viral exposure. This wasn't about making him famous. This was about protecting us. That offer felt like the first real oxygen I breathed in years. At school pickup, Liam ran toward me like he always did and asked softly if he was in trouble for asking for shoes. I kneeled down and held his face and told him, "You did nothing wrong. Asking for comfort is not a crime." We drove straight to Elena's place. We didn't grab bags. We didn't grab clothes. We didn't take anything that would waste time or alert Carson prematurely. All we had was a backpack with school folders and my purse. That night, Elena heated soup for us, and Liam laughed for the first time in days. A normal laugh, the kind kids make when they aren't scared. I sat there and just watched him, and something inside me hardened in a way I could never reverse again. I promised myself Liam would never go back to being treated like that. Carson texted nonstop that night. "Where are you? Why didn't you come back? Don't make stupid decisions. You belong here. You don't get to leave." He still believed I was property. I didn't reply. I didn't explain. I didn't plead. I laid in Elena's guest room next to Liam while he fell asleep with his toy dinosaur in his hand. And while he slept, I wasn't scared anymore. I just planned. because this revenge wasn't going to be poetic or spiritual or symbolic. This was going to be practical, real world, legal, structurally permanent. I was going to take the one thing Carson cared about more than anything in this world, and I was going to remove his power to ever decide anything about our lives again. I handed everything to the social worker in a neat plastic folder, screenshots of Carson's texts, a photo of Liam's bare feet on the driveway, my notes from the night, statements from Elena, a quick note from Liam's teacher about changes she'd noticed. She read everything without shocking me with pity. She read it like a professional who knew what to do next. "Good," she said quietly. "You did exactly right by documenting. We'll file an immediate safety plan. We'll notify the school to update pickup permissions. We'll get you a temporary safe address and connect you with emergency housing funds. I'll call a liaison who deals with workplace conduct if you want his volunteer board to know what he's done. They take those complaints seriously." I did want that. I wanted a practical ceiling over his ability to terrorize us. Within 48 hours, the school had a new form on file. Carson was not authorized to pick Liam up until the situation was investigated. My son's name badge now had an emergency code. He rode home with Elena each day because her cousin drove the carpool, and this small logistical change kept him away from the house where his feet had met cold concrete. The social worker found us a 2-bedroom emergency unit in a housing project near my new job interview, the kind of place funded by local grants for families fleeing abusive situations. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't grand. It was safe and warm and had a stove that actually worked. Liam ran around the tiny living room barefoot one evening, and I watched him jump on a rug without flinching when a door slammed. The sight felt like currency I'd been bankrupt of for years. I went back to work with Elena's encouragement and a new timeline, a full-time position at a nonprofit that offered relocation stipends and legal referrals. It wasn't an overnight miracle. It was paychecks that answered my bank account and a supervisor who believed me when I said I needed schedule flexibility. We applied for state assistance for basic needs. Nothing dramatic, nothing viral, just forms and patience and slow rebuilding. Carson called us every way he could, first pleading, then threatening, then shrill with anger when his calls were redirected and blocked. When he showed up at the school once, furious and wild, staff called campus security and refused him entry. The principal sent a note to the volunteer board where he used to be respected, documenting an incident that made clear his behavior created liability. Within a week, he was asked to step down from the committee he used to parade around. His name stopped showing up on the HOA email chain inviting him to social golf. The subtle perks that once propped up his ego evaporated because institutions stopped tolerating behavior that could hurt a child or risk their own liability. That isn't poetic vengeance, it's practical consequence. People and organizations that once amplified his voice stopped doing business with his performance of authority because it created risk. It is precise and quietly devastating to someone who lives off other people's respect. I signed forms to change our emergency contact list, updated medical records, and enrolled Liam in therapy sessions paid for by community grants. He hated the first appointment, but the second time he told the counselor about dinosaurs and toes, and I heard him say it aloud without a fracture in his voice. Those small lines of progress felt like building blocks. Weeks later, after months of steady, boring administrative work, meetings with a housing caseworker, forms for assistance, HR conversations at the nonprofit where I now worked, Carson's calls slowed. He stopped showing up at the neighborhood bar where he liked to hold court. His social life narrowed because families didn't want unpredictable risk near their kids. The few neighbors who once smiled at him stopped answering his waves. One night, I watched Liam set his alarm for school like any other kid, sandwich in his backpack, shoes laced on his feet that fit, and I realized the revenge had already happened without a spectacle. His routine, his dignity, his daily life were reconstructed into a safe sequence that didn't include my husband's cruelty. I didn't post a video. I didn't call the news. I didn't trap him in a courtroom drama for views. I used systems. Schools, social services, employers, and people who valued safety over status. I removed the levers he used to control us. When he finally stood on our doorstep months later, attempting to bargain with a softness that sounded fake even to him, he found only a locked door and a taped note from the housing office. Do not disturb. Tenant sheltered. His face went colorless in a way I'd never seen. His audience had disappeared, and with it his power to command us in the dark. I closed the curtains, watched Liam play with new sneakers that actually fit, and felt the slow, steady press of ordinary life replace the terror. The revenge wasn't a headline or a dramatic ruin. It was the slow dismantling of his ability to make choices for us, the rebuilding of our safety net, and the quiet reallocation of the only thing that truly matters, my son's daily life and dignity. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.